Now that I'm 32, Halloween doesn't hold the same magic and excitement it once did when I was a child. Back then, it was easily one of the most thrilling nights of the year, filled with the anticipation of dressing up in costumes, decorating the house with spooky ornaments, and heading out with friends to collect as much candy as our bags could carry. The atmosphere was always electric, the laughter of kids echoing through the streets, the sight of glowing pumpkins lining doorsteps, and the crisp autumn air carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves. But as I've grown older, the holiday has taken on a much more subdued tone for me. These days, my celebrations are simple and quiet. I'll usually put up a few decorations to keep the festive spirit alive, stock up on candy for the neighborhood kids, and spend the evening curled up on the couch watching classic Halloween movies. It's a comfortable routine that allows me to enjoy the nostalgia of the holiday without all the chaos. In 2022, I followed this same routine. I started my day by tidying up my house, making sure it was neat and presentable for any trick-or-treaters who might stop by. Around noon, I headed to the local store to pick up a variety of candy, everything from chocolate bars to sour gummies. I wanted to make sure there was something for everyone, whether they preferred sweet, sour, or chocolatey treats. By the time I got back home, I felt prepared and excited for the evening ahead. The decorations were already up, a few strings of orange and purple lights around the windows, a couple of plastic pumpkins on the porch, and a spooky skeleton hanging near the front door. It wasn't extravagant, but it was enough to capture the Halloween spirit. At around 3 p.m., I left my front door slightly cracked open. It was a habit I developed to make sure I could hear anyone approaching, especially since my doorbell occasionally malfunctioned. I settled onto the couch with a snack, picked a classic Halloween movie to watch, and waited for the festivities to begin. My neighborhood isn't very big, and in past years, the number of trick-or-treaters has always been modest. Usually around 10 to 15 kids throughout the evening. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on factors like the weather. I didn't expect a huge crowd, but I was looking forward to seeing at least a few kids in costumes, their faces lighting up with excitement as they reached into the candy bowl. But this year something felt different. Hours passed, and not a single knock or ring came. By 5 p.m. I started to feel uneasy. I got up and peered out the window, expecting to see a few kids and parents walking down the street. But to my surprise, the entire neighborhood was eerily quiet. There were no kids, no decorations lit up on other houses, and not a single car driving by. The silence was unnerving. It was as if the entire street had gone into hiding. I tried to brush off the strange feeling, convincing myself that maybe Halloween wasn't as popular as it used to be. Perhaps more people were attending organized events or parties instead of traditional trick-or-treating. Still, I kept the candy bowl nearby and stayed ready, hoping that at least one or two trick-or-treaters would stop by. Finally, at around 6:30 p.m., I heard the doorbell ring. Relief washed over me as I jumped up, grabbed the candy bowl, and made my way to the door. But when I turned to look through the crack in the door, I froze. Standing just outside, peering into my house, was someone wearing a costume. They had on a plain white mask, completely featureless except for two small eye holes. The mask was unsettling, like something out of a horror movie, with its blank expression and eerie simplicity. For a moment I hesitated, unsure of what to do. But then I reminded myself that it was Halloween, and creepy costumes were part of the fun. I took a deep breath, opened the door a bit wider, and held out the candy bowl with a smile, inviting them to take a handful. As they reached into the bowl, I noticed something odd. They were alone. No group of kids, no parents standing nearby, just this one person. They were also much taller than most kids, and as I got a closer look at their eyes, I could see they were bloodshot, with dark circles underneath. Their gaze felt intense, almost invasive, as if they were studying me. I felt a twinge of unease but didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe they were just an older teenager who still wanted to enjoy Halloween. After all, there was nothing inherently wrong with that. The person took some candy and walked away without saying a word. I closed the door, set the candy bowl down, and tried to focus on my movie. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling they'd left me with. Something about their presence had felt off. About 15 minutes later, I heard a noise that sounded like a footstep coming from just outside my front door. Thinking it might be another trick-or-treater, I got up again. But when I turned around, my heart nearly stopped. Standing inside my house, just a few feet from the door, was the same person in the white mask. They didn't speak, didn't move, they just stood there, silently staring at me. My mind raced as fear and adrenaline surged through me. How had they gotten inside? What did they want? Finally, I managed to stammer, "Can I help you?" The person didn't respond. They stood there for what felt like an eternity. Their gaze locked on me, before slowly backing out and leaving the house. I stood frozen for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I rushed to the door and locked it, my hands trembling. Peering out the window, I saw them walking down my driveway, glancing back at my house several times as they went. At this point, I was completely rattled. This wasn't just a weird kid in a creepy costume. It was an adult, and they had entered my home without permission. I felt a mix of fear, confusion, and anger. What were they planning? Why had they come back? I decided to call the police. As I was on the phone explaining the situation, I heard footsteps outside again. This time they didn't ring the doorbell or knock. I crept to the peephole, my heart racing, and looked out. Standing there was a man, probably in his 40s, wearing regular clothes, a brown long-sleeve shirt and jeans. He called out, "Hello. I'm looking for my kid. Have you seen them?" His voice sounded calm, almost too calm, but something about his tone and demeanor felt wrong. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had the same dark circles as the person in the mask. My stomach dropped. I backed away from the door and continued my call with the police. After a few minutes, I went back to check the peephole, but the man was gone. When the police arrived, they searched the area and found a white mask hidden in a bush near the side of my house. It had clearly been discarded in a hurry. The officers believed the man had been trying to disguise himself, likely to avoid being identified. Unfortunately, they couldn't find him that night. To this day, I don't know what his intentions were, but the entire experience was deeply unsettling. He had shown up at my house 3 times, once even pretending to be a concerned parent. Whatever he was planning, it wasn't good. I just hope he didn't harm anyone else that night.